Hey, my beautiful listeners, we are back with season 3 of The Beautiful Side of Grief, and I'm your host, Helen Morris. My incredible guests continue to share their own personal stories of grief in so many different forms and how they have managed to find the positives and beauty from their experiences. And I hope by listening to these honest, heartfelt accounts, you can find the tips, insights, resources, and strategies you need for where you're at here and now. And maybe one day even find a beautiful side to your grief like I have. So share away, as I would love this podcast to reach as many who need to hear it as possible. Don't forget to check out the episode notes as well for more information and links. Plus, the energy healing I do that changed my life forever. And this season, I'd also love to share the affirmations and meditations I'm working on, so stay tuned for those. Right now, though, my thanks for listening, and let's check out who this week's guest is. Today's episode is especially for you if you've suffered the loss of a precious sweet soul at birth or just prior to birth. This is something I can't even begin to imagine. So I'm chatting to Crystal Webster, who is the founder of Sharing Solace, author of Confessions of a Griever, speaker, mentor, entrepreneur, and most importantly, she is Madelyn Elizabeth Webster's mama. When Madelyn died in Crystal's arms just after she was born, she wanted to die too. She found herself isolated and debilitated from the grief. It took her years to learn to live again, and that was mostly because she realized her Madelyn wouldn't want her to live the rest of her life waiting to die. Sharing Solace was founded from that love and hope to help grievers grieve, wrapped in a meaningful community of support and strength, so you can always remember you're not alone. I'm excited to interview Crystal because she's going to bring a raw, honest, humorous approach to this conversation of losing her Maddie, finding out down the road she couldn't conceive, and then setting up a wonderful organization to share the load of this unimaginable grief, plus how her book can help you. So I hope you'll be able to gain some wonderful insights from today's episode. Thank you for listening, and I wish you loads of love, hope, and happiness wherever you are on your journey. So Crystal, welcome. And wonderful to finally connect with you.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, you may be thinking why I said finally able to connect. Well, we actually connected and life happened. And then, we just didn't take it any further. And now we've reconnected. And I'm always a great believer in things happening for a reason. And that was via actually another guest who you had spoken to, had a conversation with, and she was so impressed with you. So, so I'm really excited about what we've got ahead. So let's start with your interesting set of skills, how you describe yourself, because I think this gives a wonderful insight into your personality. So you start off by in brackets, necessary skills. And you talk about communication, problem solving, emotional intelligence, vodka connoisseur, creativity, social media, entrepreneurship, Dr. Seuss trivia, happiness, gratitude, and positivity, early 2000s R&B, music enthusiast, solace, marketing, public speaking, interpersonal communication. That tells me straight off the bat that you definitely have a quirky sense of humor.
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I definitely don't take myself too seriously.
And I think, sorry, carry on.
No, and I'm multi-passionate. I mean, I enjoy learning the finer points of gratitude and resilience and, enjoying a good bottle of vodka too.
Yeah, I love it because that's the key to it, isn't it? Which sometimes takes life so seriously that we forget to just actually park it for a moment and do those things that really make us reconnect with ourselves. And sometimes that is a good glass of vodka.
Mm-hmm. Or whatever your beverage du jour is.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned your beautiful Madelyn dying in your arms just hours after she was born. And whoa, that's something that, I've never experienced and I can't even begin to imagine. So can you help us understand the story surrounding that? Did you know that this was a possibility before she was born, or did it come out of the blue for you? So just share with us what that journey was.
Absolutely. My pregnancy, now this was in 2010, my pregnancy was absolutely normal up until 32 weeks. There was no concerns, no issues. It was boring for all intents and purposes. And then at 32 weeks, we went in for what we thought was a routine ultrasound. And we heard those words that you should never, I don't think any parent should ever have to hear. Something's not right. I'm going to go get the doctor. And then from there, it was a whirlwind. We found out that we didn't know a whole lot, but before Madelyn was born, we knew that the likelihood of her long-term survival was none. We didn't know much more than that. We didn't know if she was gone already. We didn't know if she was going to be stillborn or if she was, going to be born alive. And if she was, how long we would have with her. So somehow, miraculously, she was born alive. And she lived for 8 hours. And she died how I think most people, when the time comes for them, would want to. Being held by her mother, wrapped in love and support, not in a lick of pain, and knowing nothing but love.
So, I guess you need to just take from that the small blessings that, and they're not even small, the blessings that come from that. And the fact that she did come out alive, and the fact that you did get to hold her in your arms for, at least 8 hours and treasure her and love her and be with her in your arms when she finally decided to cross a veil. So, yeah, that's huge. Did she go full term or, because I'm just wondering how many weeks you had to go through asking all those questions in your mind.
So we went another 2 weeks with the pregnancy. So it was just shy of 36 weeks.
Yeah.
And that was a medical decision that they said, now it's getting, we can't save Madelyn. That's just medically impossible. Now it's getting worrisome for you as the mother carrying this child to term. We've given her the best possibility of the longest life she can have, but now it's unsafe for you. So we need to move forward.
Oh, that's not very much time at all to get your head around anything, isn't it? So how did it feel in those weeks, months afterwards when, here you were expecting to take home a beautiful wee baby in your arms, your firstborn, and you're excited and you've set the nursery up and you've got everything there. And then you go home alone without this beautiful wee soul. How did that feel for you?
Honestly, I was numb. I was so immediately following, I was so pumped full of medication and my hormones were all over the place. And I couldn't remember how to put one foot in front of the other, let alone what just happened to me for the most part. And then when I did get home, I had a C-section with Madelyn and my incision opened up. So I was put on bed rest for, I don't know. I mean, it could have been 4 days. It could have been 4 years. But it was both what I needed physically, but mentally it was excruciating.
What do you mean by that?
Obviously my body needed to heal and it needed to rest and it needed that. Mentally, I couldn't distract myself with going on walks or going to the store or I just pretty much sat there and stewed in my own grief and guilt. and had more time than I think anyone should ever have to think about all the things that I did wrong, or all the things that I could have done or should have done or would have done, or, how is this my fault? And I just went down into a very dark place because I physically wasn't allowed to do anything.
Yet we both know now that there was nothing you could have done, that it wasn't your fault, that, these things happen regardless of how much care we take of ourselves. Sometimes it's just life happening, isn't it? And I think that, that's the part when we go down that horrible path of I should have, could have, would have done this had I known. Or, we can take ourselves, into the pit of hell, really, with those thoughts and those feelings. And it took you a number of years to get past this, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. At least 5 years to get to the point that I've realized that I was kind of spiraling out of control my mind was spiraling to a very dark place.
And was that because you just kept looping it over and over again?
Yes.
What happened and what you should have done, could have done?
Could have done that. And more information kept coming out after we lost Madelyn. So after she died, obviously we knew she died and I was grieving that. And then we found out what caused her death.
Mm-hmm.
And what caused her death is she had, I won't go into the science of it, but, she had a chromosomal imbalance, which means she basically didn't have all the pieces of the puzzle to build a human puzzle, basically. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, there's 2 reasons for that. One, sometimes this just happens, some piece gets lost and vacuumed up kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or one of her parents could have a similar issue and passed it on to her genetically. Come to find out, I have that issue and passed it on to her. Obviously, I had no idea, and it wasn't intentional. And also, I had a lot of grief and guilt around that because even though I didn't kill my daughter, in some ways I did.
What a huge burden for you to carry. And, something that was totally out of your control. Like, was just the roll of the dice.
Oh, yeah.
And, oh gosh, I'm tearing up just listening to you because, what you're describing is that impossible, never-ending scenario that so many people must go through when they're in a similar situation and they get all the pieces and somehow feel that they're responsible for what happened. And the reality is that no. If we know how fortunate we are just to have a baby come full term, and the odds of that are so great, and anything at any time can go wrong, and we don't often realize that. We just take it for granted. So that was a huge burden you were carrying. So tell us, okay, when you got to that point of making that decision to actually move forward or stay where you were?
I really realized that I was making everyone around me miserable. I obviously was not in a good place. I was pretty miserable, but my misery was making everyone else miserable. My husband, my friends, my family, I was bringing the party down.
Mm-hmm.
And my personality doesn't want to be, if I'm going to do anything, it's to make sure everybody's having a good time kind of thing. Yeah. And I was like, I can't continue to do this. Like, I'm fine sitting in my misery and being miserable and just being here. But I can't continue to do this to the people that I know and love. And, mostly my husband, because he had to stick with me all day, every day.
So tell us how you two survived that, because it's a big journey you went on, but also Kyle went home, your husband went home without, his little baby girl as well. So how did you two navigate that?
He immediately went into protector mode and kind of, he's very good at doing what has to get done. He's like, I have to dress the wounds and make sure there's food and, not. So he found ways to be the protector where I honestly couldn't function. Like, you had to remind me to brush my teeth or take a breath or, just those common things. As we kind of worked along, moved forward in time, we realized that we grieve very differently. And we were experiencing and feeling the loss of Madelyn in such different ways. And for a little bit, that was a point of contention between us because we thought that the way that we did it was right. Like, I thought the way that I did it was right. And so therefore every other way must be wrong. And let me help you do it the right way.
Yeah. Yep.
And he did the same thing. He's like, oh, well, this is how I grieve. So this must be the right way to grieve. And let me help you. And it came from a place of love and, and wanting to help each other. But it took us a little bit to realize that there's really no right way to grieve, and everyone does it differently.
That's so important to understand, isn't it? So how did you come around to actually, compromising on your beliefs, and accepting what each other felt?
It really started. We're really good about having knockdown, drag out fights and then being like, okay, let's agree to disagree. Because I am, when I'm I'm a freeze kind of person in the fight, flight, or freeze mentality, especially with grief. Like, I just wanted to sit on the sofa and stare at the wall or the TV that hadn't been on for 4 days. Like, I didn't need stimulus around me. I just needed to sit in the sock. Where my husband wanted to fix.
Yeah.
And like, he rewired the kitchen sink and, like, painted the entire house and just like, hey, what can I do? Because he could do those things that gave him something to do and kind of focus on a little bit, but not so much that he didn't have to think about. It just kind of split his thought process. He could think a little bit about Madelyn and also have this other thing to focus on as well. And he was doing things with his hands. And those are both right, correct ways to grieve. Just maybe not for you personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a key thing for us to understand because, that's sometimes what causes people to split because they don't realize that actually everybody's grieving, but just in different ways. And it's being able to navigate and find those areas where you have some common ground and can come together, but just respect where each other is at with their grieving. So yeah, that's such a good thing to have explained. So then I understand that you thought that you could then have another child and you went down that path and happily trekking along that path for a while until you reached a point where you then realized that you couldn't conceive. And that was like another blow. And gosh, that must have been another nightmare in itself.
Yeah. For anyone that hasn't gone through in vitro fertilization, don't. It is, you pretty much pack the entire emotional spectrum of a life into 3 months. So after we figured out what caused Madelyn's death and all these things, basically we thought the universe was telling me I can't have kids. And I was like, well, you don't tell me what I can do. I will prove you wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a whole nother layer of grief.
Yes.
Because whether you actually want to have a family or society tells you you want to have a family, that's kind of what you're working towards, right?
Yep.
In most scenarios. And it was never something that I really thought about. It was just, okay, you graduate high school, you graduate college, you get married, you buy a house, you get a picket fence, you get a dog, you get some kids, and then you get old and then you die. That's how it works. And when the reality that you think you're going to have doesn't match up with the reality that you actually are living, you have to grieve that loss.
Yeah. And you say something on your website about asking an infertile mother if she'd thought about adoption. And that's like asking a cancer patient if they've thought about getting a second opinion, or asking a vegetarian if they've thought about trying bacon. And yes, so let's explore that too, because, people, if they haven't experienced something like a miscarriage or a stillbirth or losing a child at birth or not being able to conceive, if that's outside their realm of thinking, they often can come out with the most insensitive comments because they just don't know how to talk about this. So share with us what that was like for you, and just some suggestions that, perhaps people can use to speak to people in these situations.
Well, honestly, I believe that they're trying to be helpful,
Mhm.
and they don't know what to say because, heck, I've been through it, and half the time have to really think about what I want to say. But going through the process of child loss and infertility and the secondary losses and the compounding losses, it's not having a family and, living your life is not as easy as just checking the boxes.
Mm.
There's so many levels and layers to where you want to go next. So to me, it wasn't just, okay, first you try first to have kids on your own, and then you get science involved, and then you go down the foster, and then you adopt, and then, I still have a lot of feelings around, and I will for the rest of my life. I have a lot of feelings around losing Madelyn and losing the person that I thought I was. And I don't necessarily want to say that it's resentment, or, I mean, it is what it is. And also, I just am not in the right headspace to adopt children.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to put. I think adoption and people that do adopt are the most noble, wonderful people on the planet. I wish I could be that person.
Yeah.
And also, my head is just not there, and my heart is still bleeding.
Yeah.
And to bring a child into that environment is not fair to them. And I think at the very beginning, well, the universe told me I couldn't have kids, so let me prove them wrong. And
Yeah.
very early on, you think, well, I need to fix the pain. I need to fix it. So how do I fix it? Well, I replace it with something else. And not that I ever thought I could replace Madelyn. Madelyn is precious soul and uniquely herself. Early on, I just thought having something in my arms would make it hurt less. having a child in my arms would somehow make it hurt less. And I have since learned that, well, I honestly, I haven't learned any. I don't know. Maybe it would have. That wasn't my story.
I so understand what you're saying, because we have completely different experiences. I mean, I lost my girl at 18, when she was 18. Yet, grief has so many different layers to it. And for me, it's about, never celebrating her 21st, never seeing her move into that career she so wanted to do, never having that wedding, or that, just all those things that you miss out on because she was an only child, like your Madelyn. And so you don't have anything else around you to distract you around that. And not that you want to be distracted either, because like you say, it's never about replacing or forgetting, because, Madelyn is intrinsically wound into your life at every moment, at every corner. And that is just the way it is. Yeah. So, but out of this, you then reached a point where you could set up a beautiful organization called Sharing Solace. How did that come about? What made you decide to head down that path?
That was all Madelyn's doing. There's no other way to say it or to describe it. The concept of Sharing Solace hit like a bolt of lightning. And I really, really believe that it was Madelyn saying, okay, Mom, it's about time. I've been waiting for you. It's about time you got your booty in gear and decided you're not going to be miserable forever. This is what we're going to do. And I hit the ground running, and I've never looked back.
Yeah. So share with us what Sharing Solace is all about. I mean, the name in itself is beautiful and it gives us some indication, but it is so much more than that, because you have a really beautiful concept of token trees, or a token tree. And, I love that. So,
well, thank you so much. Yeah, the whole idea is that you're given a locket. Either you give it to yourself or someone else gives it to you. And you keep it near your heart as long as that locket gives you comfort, normally in that early debilitating grief. When that locket no longer brings you the same comfort that it once did, because I think we both know that's the nature of grief. At some point, it just doesn't have that same superpower. That's when you actually open up the locket, you take out the middle token, you put that middle token into a new locket, and then you pay that new locket forward on to somebody else that needs love and support as they go along their own grief journey. And that middle token has a unique identifier inscribed on it that allows you to register it on our website. So you can actually follow that middle token as it moves from person to person to person to person over, 5 years, 50 years, 500 years.
that is such a beautiful concept, honestly. And this is how you grow the tree, isn't it? As you follow the journey, as each token gets passed on, and it's like growing the branches, isn't it?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
and I think there's something very powerful about actually removing the token from your necklace or keychain or your locket and keeping that locket, because then there's a big hole in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But it's a constant reminder that you will always have a little hole. We're always going to miss our loved ones, but we're still a whole person. And I love the symbol. Sharing Solace is all about symbolism and hidden meanings, and you make of it what you want it to be. But that's what I've made of it. Look, I'm always going to miss Madelyn.
Yeah,
and also I can still be a whole, complete person with that hole in my heart.
Yes. And I think it's so, so beautiful that, when you decide that you are ready to take the locket out of that middle part, it's like you have reached a point where you're going, okay, yeah, I've reached that point where I'm on my own 2 feet, where I've had this incredible community around me, supporting me, sharing with me. But, now I'm ready to forge the next way forward for myself. And whether that takes 1 year, whether that takes 5 years, whether that takes 20 years, is all up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. And how else does your beautiful organization support grieving mums?
In any way that we possibly can, to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that there is never, ever enough support in the grief community because everyone needs more than they get. And everyone wants to receive their support in a different form or fashion. I was never a support group kind of girl. I didn't want to go and, raise my hand and say, hi, I'm Crystal and I have a dead baby and hi, Crystal, that just wasn't for me. I wanted to read and I wanted to, learn and try to figure out why I felt the way that I did and how to adjust. And because you never get over it. It's crazy when people say that, oh, well, just get over it. Or, you're going to move on. Or I believe you choose to move forward, but you don't just forget it and move on.
Yeah, I agree with it. It's difficult to describe grief, isn't it? Because it's so many different footprints of grief, and it's whether one person is the person that steps forward and just says, "Okay, all right," and another person just stays stuck with their footprints stuck in the sand or the mud or whatever analogy you like to use. They're all so different. So the best we can do is work out what is right for us. And sometimes it is learning other lessons along that or during that time before we can see the light or see the hope or see that there can actually be happiness at the end of this. And that's why I'm always wishing people love, hope, and happiness, because I want people to always believe that that is a possibility, even if it's the last thing they feel at the moment. All right. So what do you think? What support? Because you mentioned there's just not enough support out there. So what support did you feel that you were missing in your experience of losing Maddie?
I felt like I missed almost the realism of it. I didn't want the sugar-coated, and I didn't want the higher power is in charge of everything. I kind of saw that there's kind of 2 camps in the world of grief. There is the completely scientific, the okay, let's get down to the neurons and the atoms and the bits and pieces. And then there's the higher power. And I kind of felt like there's a lot of people that want a middle of the road, that want to say, yes, I believe that the universe will conspire with me when I ask it to. There's so many things that have happened in my life that I can't truly explain. And so I just say that it's Madelyn watching out for me.
Yeah.
That to me is, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it whatever makes your heart sing. I call it Madelyn. And then I also believe that there are things that I can do myself along the way to help encourage me to heal. And that's kind of the science aspect of it. But I don't think one happens without the other.
Yeah, I think it's a conscious decision. Yes, you have to be ready to find those things that are going to help you. And like the same, my daughter, I believe like you, she's definitely my angel, definitely kicking my butt, definitely guiding me to things. And, she guided me to energy healing. So she wanted me to be able to, heal myself because I'd had really chronic conditions and that had affected my, most of my life. And so she took me down that amazing road. And then she led me to podcasting. Whoever thought I would be podcasting, like that was never on my radar. And, and I just accept and think, well, this is for a reason. I don't always understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then down the line, I go, oh, okay. I have these insights that come up and what I'm supposed to be doing and why I'm supposed to be doing it. And so now I've just reached a place, and I'm nearly 5 years on of just trusting where I'm heading, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. So yeah. Let's also talk, because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, whether they lose a child, at birth, or whether they lose a child later on, or whether it's just losing somebody precious. What on earth do you do with all the mementos and gifts relating to those precious souls? And bearing in mind, it's such a personal thing, so it's going to be different for each individual. But I know that this was one area that you struggled with, didn't you? Because, I can only imagine you had everything sort of set up for your precious wee Madelyn. So,
Oh, yes, absolutely. I had so many plans and so much set up and ready for her. Her nursery. We actually bought a house to bring Madelyn home to.
oh,
And we moved into that house 3 days before we got her diagnosis. And so, from the very get-go, it's like, this is her nursery, and I'm going to put this here and put that there. But we had only gotten to the point of loading all of the things into her room. And then we got the diagnosis, and we shut the door for years. They're like, that room in the house just doesn't exist.
mhm,
Until many years, I want to say 7 or 8 years later.
mhm.
And I'm actually talking to you from her nursery right now.
Oh, wow. How special is that?
We have, once we finally decided we would open the door and move the cobwebs and see what was in there, we've kind of turned it into a special reflection, meditation, thought space. So I'll come in here and I'll do yoga. I love to come in here and just sit and read or talk about her in this room, but nothing I don't work in this room. My husband doesn't do work in this room. This is a special place for our souls.
Oh, that is so, so beautiful, Crystal.
Oh, thanks.
Seriously.
And we have a few of the decoration, her nursery was going to be Dr. Seuss themed because I am a fan of Dr. Seuss. And therefore every child I come in contact with will know the finer points of Dr. Seuss. So we have some Dr. Seuss figurines up, and this isn't the chair, but very similar chair, the one that I'm sitting in, to what we were going to have put in her nursery. And the color scheme is kind of the same. There's just special little nods to kind of acknowledge, this is Madelyn's space, and this is for her. And also we want to use this space to honor her and to become better humans.
Wow. That's very, very powerful. And I love that idea of using that space to honor her. And I feel it and I get it. That's great. Yeah. I know for me, I let many of Tal's friends just come in and, whatever they felt connected them with Tal, whether it was she had this shoe thing, she had this clothes thing, like she was quite a quirky personality, and she loved gems and stones and things like that. So I just let her friends just go choose a thing that speaks to you. And that for me filled my heart, because I really didn't know what to do with all of this stuff. And, yeah, I've kept a couple of special things. And then we had a friend that had all her belongings stolen when she was down at university, and she had them all stored, for the next year. She was going back, and somebody had broken into the home and taken all the boxes and everything. So she had nothing. So I went, girlfriend, come on in. And they were similar size. So I said, just go for it. Just whatever you need is yours. And I felt that was right. And that you just get guided to doing things, I sometimes feel. And yeah, so I think to people, just wait until you're guided. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And definitely that is Madelyn's house.
Yes.
I'll share with you something after this, because she came through very, very strongly to me as you were talking about that. Okay, so share with us what people are going to get from reading your book, Confessions of a Griever, because that's been described as a soul-bearing, completely honest conversation with a wise friend. And it's part memoir, part self-help, part choose your own grief guide. And look, the way you write is so cheeky and so honest. And I love that. I love your personality comes through, and you say, take it or leave it, your choice, whatever works for you. So,
that's what I did too. Like there's probably been a few that have come out in the last couple of weeks, but I think I've read every single grief book there is out there. And I'm like, I like this. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, let me steal this piece, and I'll take this piece and I'll mush them together. And
yeah,
that's how that's how everybody learns to live, I think. Yeah, I'm very proud of the book. I think Madelyn is pretty proud of it too. But the piece that I think is really cool is that it is a choose your own grief guide. So at the end of every chapter, you get the option of where to go next. You don't read it front cover to back cover, because that's how you build your life. You move forward a little bit, and then you take a huge jump, and then you're like, nope, I'm going to go backwards. And that's also the topsy-turvy loop-de-loop of grief.
Yeah, because it's not linear, and you don't follow the set path of being angry or being in denial or being in that. I skipped a lot of that. I never, ever, ever experienced anger at all, and my whole grief journey. So that part just never fit my story. So, and I think it's important for people to understand, if they're waiting for the denial, it may never come. Or if they're waiting for a certain part of what they understand the grief process to be, it may never come.
Or it may come 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 times.
Yes.
Every once in a while for the rest of your life.
Yes. Yeah. So, when you're on the outside trying to love a friend in sorrow and pain, through their loss, and they feel pretty helpless, not knowing how to help them, especially when it is extended grief. What are your recommendations on helping them navigate that? Because surely you must have had some friends that were standing on the sidelines wanting desperately to help you. And, year after year, they probably felt quite helpless.
Yeah. Probably the best advice, probably the piece of advice I love to give the most is to not say, just let me know what I can do. Whether that's early on or long, give them a definite. I'm going to come over Tuesday afternoon, and I'm going to bring lunch and do your laundry. Okay. And so, or I'm going to pick up the kids from school and take them to the park and give you a few hours to just be. Okay. And that because there's something about, say, trying to come up with something for you to help me do.
And you have to think.
Yeah. Yes.
You have to think, and that's the last thing you want to do. You're in this twilight zone. And if you have to make one more decision, girlfriend.
Yes. You're decisioned out. Whether or not you've made decisions, your brain is not working. And so if now I have a new obligation, not only do I have to remember to do this and, do funeral home stuff and go here and pick out flowers, but now I have to remember to come up with something for you to help me so that you can feel better about my grief.
That's such good advice. I love that. That is awesome. Yeah, be definite.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, like, the laundry doesn't stop. There's always going to need, food and cleaning, and if there are kids that need to get taken care of, or, hey, I'm coming over Thursday night at 6:00. I'm bringing takeout food and this silly movie that we both love. And we're going to sit on the sofa and eat bad food and watch it together. And you don't have to talk.
Beautiful.
That's it. Because sometimes I just wanted a distraction, but I wasn't going to be like, hey, can you come over? Or, and then obviously give them the opportunity to say, no, that doesn't work, or be assertive, but not forceful with it. Because maybe they really, Thursday is a bad night for whatever reason, or they have something going on, or, they really don't need anybody else doing their laundry because they like to do it, just stuff like that.
That's so important, because I'm a bit of a loner, and so isolating is probably my happy place. And so I actually didn't reach out to people very much at all. And so I was very, very grateful for those friends that would just do exactly that. Ring up and say, hi, Hal, I'm bringing a coffee. I'll be there in half an hour, if that works for you. And, and it was perfect, because they would just turn up and spend a bit of time and go again and take me out of my isolation. And again, there was no set, you need to be this or that in that time. You can just sit and we'll drink coffee and say nothing, or we'll go for a drive if that's what you want to do. Whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that both sides don't really have expectations.
Yes.
Hey, I'm going to bring this stuff over, and maybe do some laundry or, scrub the toilets or whatever. But don't expect the other person to entertain you or, be able to carry on a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If they remember to say thank you, that's awesome.
Yes.
But they are grateful.
Yeah.
I promise you that. They just may not remember to say thank you.
Yeah, the fact of opening the door is your gratitude to them, actually. Yes, because you're right. We forget all those niceties sometimes. Yeah, it's such a good point. No expectations. So be the friend who just wants to be the friend, supporting without expectations, but doing something to support. Oh, beautiful advice.
But I'm here on behalf of all grievers worldwide. We appreciate and thank you for whatever you've done.
Yes.
Let that be your thank you.
Yes. And, I'm a great believer in stripping off the mask and learning to love who you are exactly as you are in this moment. And this is something I've learned in my grief journey, because I was not that person prior to losing my precious girl. So I really have had to learn to love myself, really like who I am. And with that has come tremendous freedom, tremendous peace, and it's opened doors that I could never, ever imagine. And you are a believer in that as well, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. And I love you find the reason.
Yes, and I love that on your website, you actually allow people to find that for themselves, to find out what their self-love is all about, through a great resource you've got on your website. So that's really helpful, because I think once you learn to love yourself, you then have the capacity to spread that love out.
Yes.
Mm.
Another one of my favorite quotes, I love to quote quotes, is you cannot pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, I'm a great believer in, if your well's empty, how can you possibly give to somebody? So you have to fill your own well up. So very, very similar in that. So let me just share with people what this quiz will do for them, because it will help them understand the different areas like of self-kindness, of self-judgment, of common humanity, isolation, which is me. No, no. No surprise that was one area I was moderate in. Mindfulness, as well as over-identification. So it's really good to get an understanding of what your makeup is in these areas of self-love. So definitely go and check that out. Now, just before we sort of start wrapping this up, I want you to, talk to me about grief therapy versus grief mentoring. What's the difference, and how do people decide to choose one or the other, or choose both?
I'm a firm believer of both.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you need a licensed therapeutic counselor. I'm not going to say, this is my story. I needed someone to kind of process and break down and break through all of the stuff that had previously happened to me.
Yes.
The loss of my daughter, the loss of everything. I needed to break that down, understand it, digest it, really see how it intertwined and ingrained with my life. And then at some point, I realized that continuing to do that is not, it's the 80-20 rule. Like I had gotten my 80% out of it with 20% of the work. Now I can spend the next 80%. But I wasn't feeling fulfilled going forward. I needed a way to open up my eyes to what I needed to do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So grief therapy is really like rear view mirror looking, and is so important. And then also at some point you need to look forward and really kind of, okay, now that I understand what has happened to me, how am I going to use that moving forward? And how am I going to live my life now that I fully understand where I've been and where I come from? And it's really very forward focused versus rear view focused. And both are so important, because I think living life is like in bumper cars. You never really know. You want to be going forward, but sometimes you're not. And you really got to know where you are where everything is around you.
Yes.
But I don't think you can move forward until you realize what's behind you.
Yes. That's so true. That is very, very true, because I think when you experience profound, deep, soul-shattering grief, all those masks do come off, and all those hidden depths of you do come up and rise up, whether that's straight away or down the line somewhere. It's like your soul has been laid bare, and there's stuff that you have to address, that you have to pay attention to. And it may have been something that happened, in your childhood or in your teens or in your adulthood. It doesn't matter where it happened, but, the chances are, along with the loss you experience, you're going to also drag up all this other stuff with it. So, gosh. All right. Okay, we're going to change the vibe a little bit. This is so beautiful, though. And I'm so grateful to you, Crystal, because this is the stuff we need to understand, and I'm so grateful for you sharing it and for your own grief journey to have been like this so that you're in a position to share this. So what's the best thing that's happened to you either today or this past week?
I booked a holiday. We're going on holiday in 2 weeks. It is in the US. It's Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And my husband has the whole week off from work. And so we are going to travel for the first time in a very long time. And I'm so excited.
Oh my goodness. That is awesome. Well, wishing you a wonderful, wonderful trip. Yes, that is exciting. Okay. What is the proudest moment of your life to date?
I mean, how do I not say Madelyn? I mean,
how do you not?
How do you not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. What is your go-to now when you have a moment in your day where things are turning to custard, they're not going right, and you need to pivot yourself, swing yourself out of that dark spot or dark place you're in?
I focus on my breathing because it's something, you don't have to have anything to do it. You just, you kind of block out the world and you really focus on taking deep breaths and then exhaling them and somehow just being mindful and present of your breath can switch everything.
I agree with you. There is so much research out there that indicates the power of our breath and the effect it has on our whole system. Right. What takeaways would you like to leave with our listeners?
I think no matter how you grieve, there is no right way to do it. So don't let anyone tell you that they're doing something, you're not doing it right or try to teach you how to do it. I've learned from experience that doesn't go very well. And just remember you're not alone. I promise you there is someone in the world, if not in your neighborhood, that has experienced something similar. Your grief is uniquely yours. And also there are similarities if you allow yourself to see them. And I think it's very powerful to see the similarities in someone else's story.
Beautiful. So you also are offering to our listeners the opportunity to get hold of the mini gratitude journal and also the first 2 chapters of your book. And I highly recommend a reader, though. Seriously, it's fun. And I definitely am going to get your book because it's just got such a beautiful take on looking at grief from a completely different perspective. So I'm excited to read that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So just, finish off by, I'm going to have it all in the episode notes, all the links and bits and pieces, but just, share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you.
Well, the easiest way is the website, which is just sharingsolace.com. You can get the first couple chapters of the book on there. You can get a mini gratitude journal. There's all kinds of good stuff. That's where you found the quiz. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there if you keep digging.
Yeah.
So the website's probably the easiest, best place, but I'm also on Facebook and Instagram is where I spend a lot of time. So find me over there as well.
Crystal, I have to say that this has just been an incredible conversation to be having around, a topic that is so heartbreaking and often, I think, not shared enough. There are so many hundreds, thousands of people losing their precious wee souls, all around the world every day. And somehow we just expect people to just move on and get over it and carry on with their life. And so I think it's a very, very important topic that we've covered today. And I'm very, very grateful for you sharing your journey around this.
Well, thank you so very much. This was wonderful.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. Let me know how I'm doing, or if there's a topic you'd like covered, by clicking on the Healing to Be You Gmail link or going to the Healing to Be You website. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button and please share if you know of someone who could benefit from this episode. Until next time, be kind to you and take good care.